The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
3 designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Ananda Gunaratne.
I'm Charlie McCarran.
And I'm Trevor Muller-Hagel.
And today we're going to be doing our first game in our new series on decisionless games, Candyland.
Oh.
Now, I'm sure many of you have probably played Candyland when you were a kid. Mm-hmm. But just in case you haven't, a brief refresher. I guess first, the historical perspective, which is actually, I think, quite important. So Candyland was designed by Eleanor Abbott to entertain polio-stricken kids back in 1948. I learned this fact, I looked it up, but also I was introduced to this history by John Brieger, who has some very interesting things to say about Candyland, which we'll get to. But the basic way Candyland works is you are a gingerbread person on sort of a track. Like if you imagine a fox and goose track, is that a thing? That's a thing people
Fox
know
and
about.
Goose track. I'm not sure what that is.
Well, okay. There's a track, the Rainbow Road. It's a bunch of colored squares, which take you through the Candy Kingdom to eventually end up at King Candy's castle. And along the way, you pass by a bunch of colorful characters like the horrible Plumpy and Mr. Mint, but also like Princess Lolly and Queen Frostine and other.
I do want to point out really quick that Ananda did have a negative experience with Plumpy.
Yeah, Plumpy.
Yeah, Plumpy.
Plumpy brought. Well, okay. We should finish the rules.
Yes.
First. Yes. So, every turn you will draw a card from a deck, and the card will have usually a color on it.
Okay.
And each space on the track is a different color, and the color on the card that you draw is the space that you will move to. So, for example, if you draw a red card, you'll move to the next red space on the track.
The next one. So I can't just move to any red space.
Right. It has to be the next one.
The next one. Okay.
Some of the cards have two
copies of the same color. Yep.
Yes. Some of the cards have 2 copies of the same color on them.
Are you saying they're multi-use cards?
I think they're pretty singularly used.
Yeah, they only have one.
You get to move twice.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, so some of the cards have 2 squares, in which case you move to the second square of that color. And then there are some cards, such as Plumpy's card, which make you move to a specific character's space on the board. There's also some shortcuts on the board, and some of the spaces have licorice on them. None of us landed on licorice, but if you do, you lose a turn, which is obviously quite harsh. I think one recommendation you always hear for any designer is never make people lose turns. It's a bad idea. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the mechanics. So you keep drawing cards and moving spaces until somebody gets to the end. So in our game, I was doing pretty well, and then I drew a Plumpy, and then I drew Mr. Mint, and so Charlie won. But now, Charlie, previously, we've actually worked on a game using some of Candyland's mechanics.
We did.
I played it.
Is that veering off from decisionless games too much? Yes. So we were inspired after we heard John, our friend, talk about Candyland and what you can get from it. And we joke about Candyland being no decisions, but
and it is no decisions.
There is no decisions.
You choose to draw the card and keep playing.
That's a decision. Yep. And there's definitely something to say for the development level for kids of just learning how to do that is cool. So
yeah.
But we were inspired because there's like a secondary thing that's pretty cool about Candyland.
There is.
There's no numbers involved, and every card you draw has a variable amount you're going to move.
Yes. And this is actually huge. So it was John Brieger's talk that pointed this out. But the fact that it has no numbers means, well, first of all, for the polio-stricken kids who were the target audience, it meant they didn't have to do any math, which is great. That gives it a huge leg up over kids' games that require math or basic arithmetic. It also means it's a lot faster to resolve the cards, because suppose you were to just roll some dice and move your characters based on those dice. It would take, it's a brief moment to count up the dice. Obviously, it's not hard to add together dice, but it does take a moment. And you also have to count out the spaces. But with the color system, you just move the character directly to the next color, which is very easy to find. Mm-hmm. And, it sounds like a simple thing, but surprisingly, very few games have used a system like this.
It's a very simple UI for someone to understand and grasp, and very easy to do.
It makes it very easy to resolve moves like that.
Yeah.
So Charlie and I made a game which used that for combat mechanics, where you take damage in a certain color, and then you move down to the colored space on your track.
Yeah. This is actually making me want to bring that game back out again and try.
I kind of do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tried. I think we went overboard on how many things we were trying to do with the Candyland mechanic, because we had the health track for one, which was interesting. For one, because it was like the type of damage you take matters. Mm-hmm. Like, you take some frost damage, you have to go down to wherever the blue is at that point. But we tried doing the color system with like the track you're going on to, and we tried a hex grid version that was like colored, and they were all interesting, but I think we just we tried, then it turned into like a bidding game.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it went that way, but the Candyland combat mechanic was never the problem, I think.
Yeah.
We just didn't find the rest of the game.
Yeah.
So definitely something to revisit. So something else that I noticed is that it's really nice that the core mechanic for movement works both for the little moves and also for the really big ones. So like, you draw a card, okay, you're just moving to the next square, but then you draw a card with a character's space on it. And it works exactly the same way. You just go to that character's space.
But it could be behind you.
Yeah. It could be behind you, yes.
Which is a twist.
It is a twist. Yeah. And it was frustrating for me when Plumpy just,
dragged you back into Candyland.
Dragged me back to the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's a built-in catch-up mechanism.
That's right. Yes.
Because as being out in front, every one of those cards was bad for me because it would just drag me back, whereas every one of those cards was good for Ananda because he was way behind.
Yes.
Or could have been good for me, but
you're in the middle.
I couldn't draw anything worth anything.
Which I think is an interesting point, that if you have a game that has a huge amount of randomness, that randomness is generally going to favor people who are behind rather those who are ahead, because the people who are behind really have nothing to lose. And the people who are ahead have everything to lose. And so generally they're going to be more hurt by random events. So if you want a simple capture mechanic, just make things extremely random.
You mean like in terms of all types of randomness, or just...
Well, I suppose there are probably some that would benefit leading players more. But I think in general, if you have randomness that can either help you or hurt you, it's probably going to help you more when you're behind because you don't have much to lose already. Which is also similar to how, when people are playing games, they're more willing to take big risks when they're behind because what have they got to lose?
In games with decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But even in games without decisions, clearly you can just make things very random.
Well, so here's a question. If we are to make a decisionless game, what would we do?
That's an interesting point. So I mean, one thing is you want to minimize the amount of upkeep, right? Mm-hmm. Which Candyland does a great job of doing. with its card system.
It's a deck.
Yes, without
you draw from.
without the numbers.
Yep.
But I wonder if you could go even further, like have it be mechanically based somehow.
And I'm just saying decision lists. That doesn't necessarily mean as simple as Candyland either.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, another hugely popular decisionless game, bingo,
Yeah.
and pretty much every gambling game. But
Not slots.
But I think people
I influence those.
yeah, but I still think people think of bingo as like almost like a board game. At least I
Yeah.
did growing up. It's like, oh yeah, you have your board and
It's a game.
Yeah.
it's a game.
Yeah, it's a board
But-
game.
Of course, we probably might want to save some of this content for the bonus episode.
The bonus episode is definitely coming.
Yes.
After 2 more decisionless games and a bonus episode. Don't worry, this is not
Yeah.
a joke.
But actually, okay. One other thing I would like to say about Candyland is there's sort of this similarity between the small jumps and the large jumps, which I think is very aesthetically pleasing. So like I think this might be my takeaway for this, which is that when you have mechanics, it's almost like fractals, right? Where you have like a pattern that looks the same at a large scale and a small scale. It's like that in Candyland. You've got the small moves, which work the same way as the big moves.
Yes.
And I don't know. I think there's something very aesthetically pleasing about that. I'm trying to think what other
There's
games
kind of points of symmetry between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what other games have that sort of, I guess, fractal similarity between their mechanics?
There's like a maybe more abstract version of that. It's like resource gaining games, maybe where you like gain small resources from some actions and then spend those resources to gain bigger resources. I don't know if that's the same thing, but I'm just thinking about like, yeah, there's probably an abstract version of that idea where it's like, I learned to do this little thing and then eventually I learned to do this bigger thing. That kind
looks
of feels
the
like
little
the same,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I'm trying to think of other examples, but I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, that is interesting. Having these kind of similar aspects. It's very simple, right? It's not complicated. But the fact that we can't think of another game that uses this mechanic, despite this game coming out in the 40s, and 90%, I'm pretty sure, of all, at least United Statesians, Americans, whatever you want to call us, have played it. Like, how is there not more of that kind of concept?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It seems like there's a lot of stuff from Candyland.
Well, kind of like probability farming, where like Settlers of Catan came out, and then nothing mimicked it, really, truly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in this case, the way I see it, it's less of a mechanic and more of just sort of
A style or...
yeah, an aesthetic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A concept.
Yeah, it just strikes me as aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
That's a solid takeaway.
Yeah.
What? Why do I have like 3 takeaways for Candyland? My takeaway, I'll say though, is the flavor that they put on the board, no pun intended, is I still remember from my childhood. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I remember Plumpy, and I have this negative association with him because he's a jerk. And Queest Frostine is like, oh, she's the best. And even just from like, yeah, obviously images help with that too, but just like having this concept of like, this is just the worst in the game
Yeah.
Yeah.
changes how you look at the board. And
What? And the box has like a ton of lore on it too.
there's so much lore.
There's so much lore.
Yeah.
So my takeaway is something Charlie actually said, I don't think during the episode, though, so thank you
Okay.
for that.
Bring it up.
and Ananda also mentioned it, but the complete absence of analysis paralysis is huge. And while, like, you know, it's important to have agency in a lot of games, too much agency drives analysis paralysis. And this is a good reminder that if you remove all analysis and you just have the action that the player performs, you have very limited outcomes, right? And that's going to be the outcome every time. But if you can make it so that, you know, some things just behave that way in a game, even if it's not a decisionless game, then that can actually be really helpful.
That's true. And like, not everything needs to be a choice.
Right.
So sometimes there are things where people will, like, 90% of the time choose the same thing.
Yep.
And just, why are you making... Like, I actually, in Junkernauts recently, I did that. I had... I previously had it where people could choose to pass. And then I decided, well, nobody's ever really trying to use this to exploit it, but they're still considering whether or not to do it. So I just removed that. People can't pass anymore. They have to do something on their turn, and if
Sure.
they can't, the round ends. And that makes it faster and
Weird.
easier to explain.
Despite that no one was actually even using the mechanic. Fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, mechanics are a burden. Choices are a burden. And if you remove them, it frees people.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
I've played a lot of prototypes that I felt like I'm doing a lot of work here.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I'm not having as much fun as I should be for this amount of work that I'm putting into
yes.
this game.
Yes,
Yes.
You definitely want to maintain a certain effort to reward ratio. And effort includes both making choices and also just the physical effort of moving things around on the board. If people work, they should be rewarded for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if a choice is not rewarding, maybe it doesn't need to be a choice.
This is going to make us just like embrace decisionless games and
Candyland 2.
Yep. I mean, my secondary takeaway is that we probably laughed and had more fun playing this version of Candyland than like we've.
I mean, I'll say I didn't have a lot of fun actually playing it, but I did enjoy watching you two move around the board like a couple of insane gingerbread men.
Yep.
I just so everyone knows, from my experience with the game we've just played, I moved either between 1 and 3 spaces at a time, never got a single unique character space, or hit a secret shortcut.
Yep.
So
And ended up in last place.
and believe it or not, ended up in last place, despite being ahead of Ananda for a solid couple of turns.
Yep.
I drew Queen Frostine, or no, Princess Lolly. Yeah, I drew
Lolly.
Princess Lolly near the end of the game.
Because Charlie drew Queen Francine.
Frostine.
Frostine.
At
Come
the
on,
very
Trevor.
end,
When it
when
didn't
you
even
had already
help
passed
him.
it,
It didn't even
we had to go
help him.
back to
Yep.
her.
Just a waste of a good card.
But in doing so, I blocked you guys. from
I could have
getting
gotten
Queen
it,
for
and I actually
Frostine.
could have won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catch-up mechanics.
Yeah.
I will say, I'm just remembering now, I did implement Candyland style thing into when I was trying to develop Four Humors. My first game that got published was nothing to do with Candyland at all, but I just had this idea of like, well, what if people moved up this victory track based on the color of the area that they got, and then went up. And immediately my first playtest, people were like, this is like Candyland, why would you do that? And they immediately hated it. So I got rid of that idea. But I still like that idea of the variable nature of the track.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So-
well, I guess should probably say April Fools, but
also,
yeah.
But also, Trevor, are you going to do a design challenge?
oh my God, no, I'm not going to.
Oh.
So for clarity, we are not doing a series on decisionless games.
Nope, we're
Next
not.
week, programming will resume as usual with our next
programming.
series. That was not even intentional. But
Wow. Back to our regular
Spoiler
scheduled
alert.
program.
If that means if you got this far into the Candyland episode, you get a preview of what's to come. Mm-hmm. Which thank you for hanging in with us on this one. Hopefully, actually, you did take away something from it. Which
Yeah, wait, we didn't do takeaways.
we did.
We did take
You did
away.
too.
Oh, yeah, we did. I
Yeah, you did too. What are you talking about?
Okay, it's late.
But yeah, thank you for hanging out with us
Yep.
during our special April Fool's episode.
Yeah. See you next time.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show. Welcome back to the Tabletop...
Do I need to announce it?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Just give me a moment.
Okay.
Give me a moment.
You got this.
Okay.
I believe in you.
He immediately smacked his head on the table.
Okay. All right. This is fine.